A billionaire father thought he knew his shy son until a playful waitress under the table changed everything. Mr. Harrison was not the type of father who often spent time in ordinary places. Billionaires usually had their worlds filled with private jets, meetings in skyscrapers, and invitations to exclusive events. But today was different. Today, he wanted to do something simple, something normal, something that would let him spend a few hours with his 8-year-old son, Ethan, without the pressure of business deals, phone calls, or assistants hovering around. He wanted to take Ethan to a real restaurant, one where people could see them as just a father and son. It's not a billionaire. The restaurant they chose was in the heart of the city. It was not flashy, but it was elegant enough to reflect a certain quiet sophistication. The polished wooden tables, the gentle hum of conversation, and the soft clinking of cutlery created an atmosphere that seemed to be inviting yet calm. Mr. Harrison had walked into countless restaurants before, but this time he was nervous. He had made sure to pick a place where Ethan would feel comfortable. It was strange, he thought, to be nervous about something so ordinary. But this was not ordinary to him. Ethan, his son, was small for his age and had a quiet demeanor that often made others mistake him for shy or nervous. He had a soft curiosity about the world, the kind that often led him to observe before speaking. Today, however, he seemed unusually quiet. As they stepped inside, Ethan clung slightly to his father's hand, his eyes darting around the room, taking in the soft lighting and the movement of the waiters. He noticed the other children at nearby tables, some laughing loudly, some playing quietly with their parents. Ethan watched them carefully, unsure of how he fit into this world that seemed both exciting and intimidating. Mr. Harrison could sense his son's unease. He knew he had always pushed Ethan to be strong, confident, and capable. But he also knew he had to be patient today. No lectures, no strict instructions, no talks about responsibility or success. Just lunch, just the two of them, just a moment to connect. He guided Ethan to a corner table where they would have some privacy, yet enough visibility to observe the life around them as they settled into their seats. A young waitress approached with a warm smile. Her name tag read Mia. She looked friendly, approachable, and somehow immediately put Ethan at ease. Mia had a way of seeing people that seemed almost magical. She noticed Ethan fidgeting with the corner of the menu, his small hands twisting the paper nervously. Without saying much, she knelt slightly to his level and gave him a small nod, as if to say, "It's okay. You can be yourself here." Ethan's eyes widened a little. No one had ever treated him with such gentle attention before. Most adults either ignored his quiet presence or spoke to him with impatience, expecting him to adapt quickly to their world. But Mia did not rush him. She simply waited, giving him the space to breathe. Mr. Harrison observed this carefully. Noticing the small change in his son's posture, Ethan straightened slightly, his fingers relaxing on the table. For the first time in the day, a small smile appeared on his face. Mr. Harrison felt a rush of relief and pride. This was what he wanted to see Ethan comfortable. To see him happy without the weight of expectation pressing down. Mia returned to take their order, speaking in a gentle voice that never felt rushed or forced. She suggested dishes with enthusiasm, describing flavors in a way that made even the simplest meal sound exciting. Ethan listened intently, asking questions about certain foods. And Mia responded patiently, explaining ingredients and sharing little stories about how the dishes were made. Ethan's fascination grew. He asked questions with curiosity and listened with genuine interest. Mr. Harrison could not help but feel a quiet admiration for Mia's ability to connect with his son as the conversation continued. Mr. Harrison began to notice more details about the restaurant. The other diners were absorbed in their own meals and conversations. Yet there was a sense of community, a gentle rhythm that made the place feel alive but not overwhelming. He noticed the subtle interactions between the staff, the small smiles shared among coworkers, the way they anticipated needs before they were even voiced. He realized that in his own world of wealth and power, such simple attentiveness was rare. Everything was always about efficiency, profit, or status. Here, it was about people. Ethan, now more relaxed, leaned slightly closer to Mia as she explained a dish. Mr. Harrison felt a mixture of curiosity and amazement. He had watched his son grow up in a controlled environment, surrounded by tutors, security, and structured playdates. It was rare for Ethan to encounter someone who could make him forget his surroundings and simply enjoy a moment. Yet Mia had done exactly that. Her warmth and attentiveness had broken through the walls that Ethan often built around himself. For a moment, Mr. Harrison allowed himself to step back and just observe. He watched his son's small expressions of delight. The way his eyes sparkled when he understood something new, and the soft laughter that escaped when Mia made a little joke. He felt a pang of emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel in public, pure, unfiltered pride and happiness. This was not about wealth or power or achievement. This was about seeing his child truly happy. The waitress continued to engage Ethan subtly, asking about his interests and hobbies. Ethan spoke about his love for drawing, the small animals he liked to observe in the park, and the little stories he created in his notebook. Mia listened attentively, nodding, asking questions, and even encouraging him to elaborate on his stories. Each response brought a wider smile to Ethan's face, and Mr. Harrison found himself leaning in slightly, eager to hear more, but careful not to interrupt the delicate connection forming between his son and the waitress. As they waited for their food, Ethan's nervousness had almost completely melted away. He had become animated, speaking freely and laughing quietly. Mr. Harrison felt a subtle relief wash over him. He realized that these simple moments, these ordinary interactions, were far more valuable than any grand gesture or expensive gift. For the first time in a long while, he truly understood that connection, attention, and patience were gifts far greater than money. In that restaurant, surrounded by the hum of everyday life, Mr. Harrison watched his son in a way he rarely did. He noticed the way Ethan's small hands moved when he gestured, the sparkle in his eyes when he laughed, and the quiet moments when he thought deeply about Mia's questions. He felt a renewed sense of responsibility, not to control, but to nurture, to allow his son to grow in a world that was sometimes overwhelming, yet full of wonder by the time their meals arrived. The tension that had accompanied Mr. Harrison and Ethan into the restaurant had almost entirely disappeared. The air between them felt lighter, freer. Ethan was ready to eat, chatting comfortably with Mia, asking questions about flavors and ingredients. Mr. Harrison, sitting quietly, realized that sometimes the smallest acts, a kind word, a gentle smile, a patient conversation could change a person's day, maybe even their life. The simple lunch had become more than just a meal. It was a step toward understanding, toward connection, toward a relationship between father and son that was built not on expectation or wealth, but on presence and care. Mr. Harrison silently vowed to remember this moment, to carry its lesson into the rest of his life, and to seek more moments like this for Ethan. And as Ethan continued to talk, laugh, and engage with Mia, Mr. Harrison realized that this ordinary afternoon in a quiet restaurant was already turning into something extraordinary, something that neither he nor his son would forget. After the plates arrived, Ethan's eyes lit up with curiosity. The colors, the smells, the way the food was arranged, everything seemed like a small adventure to him. He picked up his fork carefully, turning it over in his small hands. But he seemed more interested in observing than eating at first. Mr. Harrison watched silently, smiling to himself. It was rare to see Ethan so engaged in something as ordinary as a meal, and he felt a quiet pride welling up inside. Mia, the waitress, noticed Ethan's hesitation and leaned slightly toward him again. "Do you want to try this first?" she asked, pointing to a small piece of food on his plate. Her voice was gentle, encouraging, not like a teacher giving orders, but like someone inviting him into a game. Ethan nodded, his small hand trembling a little as he picked up the fork. When the food touched his tongue, his eyes widened in surprise, a mixture of delight and wonder. "I like it," Ethan said quietly, but his tone was full of excitement. He looked up at Mia, and for a moment the restaurant felt like it had disappeared. It was just him and the friendly woman who seemed to understand him in a way that no one else did. Mr. Harrison noticed how Ethan's whole body relaxed as he tasted the food. How his small shoulders stopped tensing with every movement. Mia smiled warmly. "I'm glad you like it. You have good taste," she said playfully. Her tone was soft, but there was a sparkle in her eyes, a way of making Ethan feel special without making it obvious. She continued to engage him, asking little questions about his day, his favorite games, and what he liked about school. Ethan answered carefully at first, but Mia's easy manner slowly drew words out of him. Mr. Harrison watched from across the table, leaning back slightly in his chair. He had seen Mia interact with many customers, but the way she handled Ethan was remarkable. She seemed to know exactly how to reach him, how to make him feel safe and encouraged without being overbearing. Every laugh Ethan let out felt like a small victory, and Mr. Harrison felt a sense of relief he hadn't expected. He had always worried about his son feeling isolated or pressured in social settings. But here was a woman who seemed to unlock a side of Ethan that few people ever got to see, as they continued to eat. Ethan started to fidget in a playful way. He looked at Mia with wide eyes, and suddenly he seemed to have an idea. Without thinking too much, he slid a small toy from his paquita, a little figurine he had brought with him, and dropped it under the table. Mia's eyes followed the movement, and she quickly understood what he was doing. "Ah, a secret mission?" she whispered, crouching slightly so she was at his level under the table. Ethan nodded enthusiastically, his cheeks turning a little pink. He giggled quietly, not wanting anyone else to notice. Mia reached under the table carefully, pretending to search for the tiny figurine. When she found it, she held it up with a triumphant smile. Ethan clapped softly, trying not to laugh too loudly. Mr. Harrison blinked in surprise. He had not expected this. A waitress playing along with a secret game under the table with his son. It seemed unusual, even a little improper, but the way Ethan's face lit up made him pause. He realized that what he was witnessing was something rare, genuine. Spontaneous connection between two people, one adult and one child. Without any pretense or obligation, Ethan continued the little game, moving the toy around subtly and whispering little instructions. Mia followed along, pretending to be a spy or a rescuer, creating a tiny world under the table that belonged only to them. Ethan's giggles grew, soft but full of joy, and for the first time that day, Mr. Harrison felt completely at ease. His son was not shy, not anxious, not hiding behind fear or expectation. He was playing, laughing, and feeling seen. As the meal went on, the game became more elaborate. Ethan would give Mia tiny missions, like rescuing an imaginary friend or finding a secret treasure under the table. Mia played along effortlessly, her face serious in mock concentration, her hands carefully reaching under the table to complete the tasks. Each successful mission brought more laughter from Ethan, and Mr. Harrison found himself smiling in a way he rarely did in public. He felt like a proud observer, witnessing something beautiful and simple that money could never buy. Other diners glanced occasionally, noticing the subtle movements and quiet giggles, but no one suspected the full story. To them, it was just a child fidgeting under the table and a polite waitress kneeling to interact. But to Ethan and Mia, it was a small adventure, a secret world where laughter was free and attention was undivided. Mr. Harrison felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was slightly alarmed by how unconventional this behavior was. On the other hand, he could not deny the joy it brought his son. He realized that he had always been so focused on proper behavior, appearances, and rules that he often missed moments like this. Here was a person who was giving Ethan attention, encouragement, and fun, all without judgment. And Ethan was responding in ways that Mr. Harrison had hoped for but rarely witnessed. As the meal continued, Mia began to ask Ethan about his favorite stories, the ones he liked to read at home or in school. Ethan leaned forward eagerly, whispering under the table about dragons, adventures, and secret kingdoms. Mia listened, her eyes wide in pretend amazement, reacting as if each detail was incredibly exciting. Ethan's imagination bloomed in response, and he spoke with confidence and creativity. Mr. Harrison felt a warmth spread through him. It was rare to see Ethan so uninhibited, so fully himself at one point. Ethan tried to involve Mr. Harrison in the game, holding up a tiny figurine and asking him to rescue the princess. Mr. Harrison chuckled, feeling a little awkward but participating anyway. He lowered his hand toward the table, and Ethan's face lit up in surprise and delight. It was a small, fleeting moment of connection, but it felt meaningful. Mr. Harrison realized that even though he often worried about being a good father, sometimes the simplest acts, playing a little game, laughing quietly, were the most important. Mia continued to encourage Ethan, asking subtle questions that challenged his imagination and made him think creatively. She never rushed him, never interrupted, and never treated him like a child who needed to be corrected. Instead, she treated him like a friend in a tiny secret world. Ethan's laughter became more confident, and he started speaking in longer sentences, describing elaborate scenarios and little inventions he had. Imagined Mr. Harrison was amazed at the transformation. As the plates began to empty, Ethan's enthusiasm remained undimmed. The game under the table had become the highlight of his day, and he was reluctant to let it end. Mia, sensing this, leaned under one final time and handed him a small napkin folded into a tiny paper boat. "A gift for my favorite secret agent," she whispered. Ethan's eyes sparkled, and he hugged the tiny boat close. Promising to return it safely to the home base under the table, Mr. Harrison watched all of this quietly, feeling a mixture of admiration, relief, and a touch of humility. He realized that Mia had done something extraordinary without even trying. She had broken through the walls that often surrounded his son, helping him feel confident, happy, and free to be himself. He had witnessed a connection that he had longed for, but rarely seen at a true moment of understanding and care between an adult and his child. When the meal ended, Ethan reluctantly returned the toy to Mia with a shy smile, but the magic of the game lingered. He had laughed, learned, and felt valued in a way that he had rarely experienced outside of home. Mr. Harrison realized that sometimes the most memorable experiences were not the expensive gifts, the fancy toys, or the lessons in success. They were these small, unexpected moments where someone simply saw you, played with you, and treated you with kindness as they prepared to leave. Mr. Harrison thanked Mia sincerely, his tone warm and unforced. Ethan smiled up at her, waving goodbye to the tiny world they had shared under the table. Mia winked, and Ethan giggled one last time. Mr. Harrison felt a quiet pride. Today, he had witnessed something rare, something that would stay with him and his son for a long time. It was a reminder that connection, attention, and simple acts of kindness could change a day, or even a life, in ways that nothing else could. As the lunch went on, Ethan and Mia became more immersed in their secret world under the table. What had started as a small game with a toy soon grew into a full-fledged adventure. Ethan whispered tiny instructions, describing imaginary obstacles and challenges that needed to be overcome. Mia leaned down, moving her hands carefully, pretending to follow his instructions with absolute seriousness. Every movement, every whispered word, drew a giggle or a quiet laugh from Ethan, and he began to lean forward, his small frame almost spilling out of the chair, so focused on their game that the world above the table seemed to disappear. Mr. Harrison watched silently, sitting back in his chair. At first, he had felt a twinge of disbelief. Here was a grown woman, a professional in a busy restaurant, crouched under the table playing a child's game. But as he observed Ethan's expression, he realized that something extraordinary was happening. This game, small and playful as it was unlocking a part of his son that he rarely got to see. Ethan was brave, creative, and completely absorbed in the adventure, and for the first time. Mr. Harrison could see his son not as a quiet, shy boy, but as someone full of imagination and joy. Mia had a natural talent for understanding children. She did not laugh at Ethan's ideas or dismiss them as silly. Instead, she treated each scenario as if it were real, reacting with mock seriousness and playful urgency. "Watch out. The dragon is moving fast. We need to rescue the tiny hero before it's too late," she whispered under the table. Ethan gasped, his eyes wide, and then began carefully moving his toy through the imagined obstacles. The intensity of their little game drew him in completely, and he forgot about everything else in the restaurant. Mr. Harrison felt a deep sense of awe. He had always known that Ethan had a vivid imagination, but he had rarely seen it in action. In the quiet moments at home, Ethan would draw or tell stories, but he often held back, unsure if anyone was truly interested. Today, though, with Mia's encouragement and her willingness to meet him in his world, Ethan blossomed. He spoke quickly, describing tiny adventures, secret codes, and imaginary creatures with such detail that Mr. Harrison could almost see the entire scene playing out under the table as the game continued. Ethan began to give Mia more elaborate tasks. "You have to crawl through the cave without waking the monsters," he whispered. Mia crouched carefully, moving her hands as if navigating an invisible tunnel. Ethan's laughter erupted, soft but filled with pure excitement, and he clapped his hands quietly, afraid that other diners might notice. Mr. Harrison couldn't help but smile. Watching his son laugh like this, completely unguarded and fully engaged, was a rare and precious sight. Other diners occasionally glanced under the table, curious about the subtle movements, but none of them understood the secret adventure unfolding there. To them, it was just a child and a friendly waitress. Nothing more. But to Ethan and Mia, the world under the table was real, dangerous, exciting, and completely captivating. Ethan's imagination flowed freely, and Mia followed every twist and turn, adding her own creative touches to the story. She was careful, patient, and fully invested. Treating Ethan's tiny world with the respect it deserved, Mr. Harrison found himself leaning forward, unable to look away. He noticed small details. The way Ethan's hands trembled slightly with excitement. The way his eyes sparkled, and the soft sounds of quiet laughter that escaped him in moments of triumph. He realized that these small, hidden moments were teaching Ethan something important: confidence, trust, and the joy of shared creativity. Mia was not just entertaining his son. She was helping him build courage and social connection in a way that words alone could never achieve. The game became more complex as Ethan introduced new elements. He whispered about secret traps, hidden treasures, and imaginary allies who needed to be rescued. Mia played along with perfect timing, reacting to every cue, and Ethan responded with even more excitement. His small face glowed with delight, and his voice grew stronger and more confident with each passing minute. Mr. Harrison could see a transformation happening before his eyes. The boy who had been shy and hesitant when they first entered the restaurant was now fully alive in his imagination. Taking charge of his own adventure, at one point, Ethan paused and looked up at his father with wide, serious eyes. "Dad," he whispered, "you have to help us. You can't see it yet, but the monsters are real." Mr. Harrison blinked, slightly taken aback, but he could not resist the twinkle in his son's eyes. He leaned forward just a little, placing his hand gently near the edge of the table. Ethan smiled, a mix of excitement and relief, and continued to direct the game. Even this small involvement brought him closer to his son in a way that no lecture, gift, or scheduled activity ever could. Mia continued to encourage Ethan, asking subtle questions that prompted him to think creatively and make decisions. "If you choose this path, what will happen next?" she asked. Ethan considered carefully, then whispered his answer with growing confidence. The quiet dialogue under the table strengthened not just his imagination, but his ability to communicate and make choices. Mr. Harrison realized that in the midst of this simple play, his son was learning skills that would serve him far beyond the restaurant walls: confidence, patience, problem-solving, and the joy of collaboration. Ethan's excitement grew to the point where he almost forgot to eat. His fork sat untouched as he whispered instructions and giggled quietly. Mia, noticing this, leaned over and said softly, "You can eat a little too. Adventures are fun, but even heroes need energy." Ethan laughed, taking a small bite, then returned immediately to the game, energized and more animated than ever. Mr. Harrison smiled at the small human reality of it all. Even heroes needed to eat. Even imaginary adventures had rules. The restaurant itself seemed to fade into the background. The clinking of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, the occasional murmur of diners, all of it became irrelevant. For Ethan and Mia, and for Mr. Harrison, observing quietly, the world under the table was all that existed. It was a small, private universe where laughter, creativity, and connection reigned supreme. Ethan's tiny giggles punctuated the air. each one a reminder that joy could be found in the most unexpected places. As the game progressed, Ethan began to introduce challenges that required collaboration. "You need to be careful here, Mia. If you step wrong, the bridge will fall," he whispered urgently. Mia followed his instructions perfectly, moving her hands in precise, careful motions. Ethan's excitement grew with each successful maneuver, and Mr. Harrison felt a swell of pride. Not only was his son brave and creative, but he was also learning teamwork and trust in ways he had never expected from a simple lunch outing. At one point, Ethan hesitated, unsure of the next step. Mia noticed instantly, offering a soft suggestion without taking over the game. "What do you think should happen next?" she asked. Ethan's face lit up as he formulated a plan, whispering his ideas with determination. The game continued seamlessly, with Ethan leading the adventure and Mia supporting him every step of the way. Mr. Harrison realized that this was exactly what his son needed: guidance without control, encouragement without pressure, and freedom within a safe environment. Time seemed to slow down. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, yet no one else in the restaurant noticed anything unusual. Ethan was completely absorbed, laughing quietly, whispering instructions, and watching intently as Mia executed his plans. Mr. Harrison sat back, quietly marveling at the transformation. This shy, careful boy was now confident, imaginative, and full of life. It was as if the simple act of playing a game under a table had unlocked something that had been hidden for far too long by the time. The meal was nearly finished. Ethan was glowing with happiness. He whispered the final stages of the adventure, directing Mia to complete a series of imaginative tasks that concluded with a dramatic rescue and a triumphant victory. Mia played along perfectly, her hands moving with care and her expressions full of mock seriousness. Ethan clapped softly, victorious, and looked up at his father with a broad, genuine smile. Mr. Harrison felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of pride. In deep gratitude, he realized that this small game, playful and innocent as it seemed, had done something extraordinary. It had built trust, confidence, and joy. It had strengthened the bond between father and son, and it had reminded him of the power of imagination and attention. Mia had given Ethan a gift far greater than any toy, any meal, or any lesson. She had given him the space to be fully himself, to be seen and to be heard. As the meal came to an end, Ethan reluctantly returned the toy and whispered a quiet thank you to Mia. His cheeks were flushed with excitement, his eyes still sparkling. Mr. Harrison reached out and ruffled his hair, a silent acknowledgement of the joy he had witnessed. For him, this was more than just a lunch. It was a glimpse into his son's true potential and a lesson in the simple but profound power of connection, patience, and play. Engaging English, fully in third person, and story-driven style, by the time the plates had been cleared away, the little world under the table had come to a natural pause. Ethan sat back, his small chest rising and falling with the excitement of the adventure. His face glowed, his cheeks flushed, and his eyes sparkled as if the tiny universe he had created still existed somewhere just below the surface of the ordinary restaurant floor. Mia sat back carefully, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but her warm smile never left her face. She had shared in the joy, the laughter, the imagination that Ethan had poured into the game. Mr. Harrison had watched quietly for what felt like hours. Even though it had only been a short time, he was overwhelmed in a good way by the sight of his son so completely alive. He had seen Ethan laugh and play before, of course, but never like this. Never with someone who seemed to understand him without effort, who gave him the freedom to explore his imagination without criticism, and who treated him with genuine respect and care. It was clear to Mr. Harrison that Mia had given Ethan something extraordinary. Ethan, still giggling softly, leaned forward under the table and whispered to Mia, "That was the best mission ever. You saved everyone perfectly." Mia nodded with mock seriousness. "It was not easy, Agent Ethan, but we make a great team." Ethan laughed quietly, then glanced up at his father with a shy, questioning look. It was as if he wanted to make sure his father had seen what had happened. that this small victory had not gone unnoticed? Mr. Harrison cleared his throat gently and spoke, trying not to disturb the subtle magic of the moment. "I saw everything, Ethan. You did amazing." Ethan's eyes widened, a mixture of pride and relief washing over his small face. For the first time, he felt truly recognized by his father, not for following rules or being quiet and obedient, but simply for being himself. The validation filled him with a confidence he rarely experienced in public. Mia, sensing the delicate moment, smiled softly and added, "He's really brave. Mr. Harrison, I've seen few children so creative and focused." Mr. Harrison felt a warmth spread through him at her words. Her observation was simple, yet it struck deep. For years he had worried about Ethan's quietness, his shyness, his reluctance to speak up. But here was someone outside of the family, a stranger really, saw Ethan exactly as he was capable, imaginative. Mr. Harrison's mind began to reflect on his own childhood. He had grown up in a world where expectations were always high, where mistakes were rarely forgiven, and where appearances mattered more than feelings. He remembered times when he had longed for someone to notice his own imagination, his own small triumphs. Sitting there now, he understood that Ethan's world could be shaped very differently. He realized that too often he had measured his son against invisible standards, worrying about social skills, behavior, and achievement. Rather than simply allowing him to enjoy being a child, Ethan, sensing the quiet change in his father's demeanor, reached for his fork again but paused. "Dad, did you like the mission too?" he whispered, his small voice hesitant but hopeful. Mr. Harrison smiled warmly, leaning slightly toward him. "Yes, Ethan, I loved it. You were brilliant." Ethan's small chest rose and fell with relief. His father's praise was not about obedience or talent in school. It was about courage, imagination, and creativity. It was exactly what he needed to hear. Mia watched the exchange quietly, understanding the subtle power of the moment. She had helped create the space for Ethan to shine, but the father's recognition was now what truly mattered. She smiled softly, a gentle reassurance, letting the two of them connect in their own way. For Ethan, her presence had been the spark. For Mr. Harrison, seeing his son flourish under her guidance was a revelation. Mr. Harrison's mind wandered further. He remembered the countless times he had tried to engage Ethan, only to be met with hesitation or nervousness. He remembered the dinners where he had lectured about manners, the structured playdates that felt more like lessons than fun, the subtle pressure he had placed on Ethan to conform to a world that he himself had mastered long ago. But here, in a simple restaurant, at a corner table, with a young waitress crouched under the table, he had witnessed something that no lecture, no plan, and no reward could ever have achieved. Ethan had been himself, fully and completely. A quiet realization settled over Mr. Harrison. Perhaps he had been too focused on outcomes. Yes. On appearances. On controlling every aspect of Ethan's life. Perhaps he had underestimated the power of presence, patience, and play. Watching his son laugh and strategize under the table had opened his eyes to a truth he had long avoided. Children thrive when they feel safe, seen and encouraged, not when they are constantly guided by expectations. Ethan, noticing the thoughtful expression on his father's face, whispered again, "I liked it when we saved the treasure. Dad, you should try next time." Mr. Harrison chuckled softly. "Next time," he promised. The words felt heavier than usual, filled with more meaning than a casual remark. He meant it. He would try. He would allow himself to enter Ethan's world more often. Not as a teacher or critic, but as a companion, a supporter, and someone who celebrated his son's small victories. Mia smiled, sensing that the father was finally seeing the full value of what had happened. Sometimes, she said softly, children just need someone to believe in them, to follow along in their world without judgment. That's all it takes to make a difference. Mr. Harrison nodded, her words echoing in his mind. It was a simple statement, yet it carried a weight that resonated deeply with him. He understood now that parenting was not about controlling or correcting, but about witnessing, encouraging, and nurturing. Ethan, feeling the positive energy from both Mia and his father, leaned back with a satisfied sigh. The meal was ending, but the adventure had left a mark on him. He felt proud, valued, and truly happy. For a child who often doubted his own worth or abilities, this feeling was transformative. He had played, he had laughed, and he had been recognized not for following rules, but for being himself. Mr. Harrison realized that he had learned something equally important. He had always thought that his role as a father was to protect, instruct, and guide. But watching Ethan today, he understood that sometimes the best gift a parent could give was freedom, the freedom to explore, to imagine, to fail, and to succeed in a safe environment. Mia had provided that spark, but he now saw that his own willingness to step back and observe, to celebrate his son's joy without judgment, was just as crucial as the final moments of lunch approached. Ethan handed the toy back to Mia with a shy smile. "Thank you for playing with me," he whispered. Mia nodded gently. "Thank you for letting me join your adventure. Ethan, you're a remarkable agent." Ethan's small laugh followed, and he looked up at his father with a mixture of pride and gratitude. Mr. Harrison reached out, placing a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You are remarkable, Ethan, today. You showed me how brave and creative you really are." For Mr. Harrison, this moment crystallized the lesson of the day. It was not about wealth, success, or appearances. It was about being present, noticing the small joys, and supporting the people you love in ways that mattered most. Mia had been the catalyst, but the transformation was now complete between father and son. He felt a quiet, profound gratitude for his son, for Mia, and for the simple, yet extraordinary power of attention, encouragement, and shared play as they rose from the table. Mr. Harrison silently vowed to carry this lesson forward. He would seek more moments like this, more opportunities to witness Ethan's creativity and courage, and to celebrate them. He understood now that the greatest lessons were not taught, they were experienced, shared, and lived. And in this quiet restaurant, under the guidance of a kind, imaginative young waitress, he had witnessed a moment that would forever change the way he approached his son, his parenting, and even life itself. The meal was over, and the quiet hum of the restaurant filled the space as Mr. Harrison, Ethan, and Mia prepared to leave. Ethan's small hands held tightly to the little toy that had been central to their adventure under the table. He looked up at Mia with a shy smile and whispered, "Thank you for playing with me. That was the best lunch ever." Mia knelt slightly, bringing herself down to his level, and whispered back, "And thank you, Ethan, for letting me join your mission. You were an amazing leader." Ethan's eyes sparkled, and for a moment, Mr. Harrison felt a swell of emotion he had not anticipated. He had spent much of his life focused on efficiency, results, and control. Every decision, every interaction, had been weighed carefully to maximize success. But today, sitting in this quiet corner of a downtown restaurant, watching his son laugh, play, and shine, he realized that some of life's most important lessons could not be measured in charts, money, or accomplishments. They were measured in moments, in connection, and in the freedom to simply be. Ethan turned toward his father, holding out the toy triumphantly. "Look, Dad, I did it. The mission is complete." Mr. Harrison smiled warmly and reached out, taking the toy and holding it gently. "Yes, Ethan, you completed it perfectly. I'm proud of you." Ethan's grin widened, and he felt a surge of pride that was entirely his own. It was not something he had achieved to please others or meet expectations. It was something he had created, led, and celebrated himself. Mia watched quietly, her eyes kind and understanding. She knew that this simple act, this small game under the table, had done more than entertain a child. It had opened a door that allowed Ethan to feel confident, seen, and celebrated for who he truly was. She could sense the bond strengthening between father and son, and she smiled softly, knowing that her role, though brief, had been meaningful. Mr. Harrison reflected on everything he had witnessed. He thought about the countless moments he had missed in Ethan's lifetimes when he had been too focused on control, too preoccupied with appearances, or too distracted by business matters. But here in this quiet corner of a restaurant, he saw what truly mattered. Ethan's joy, creativity, and courage were treasures far greater than any material wealth he could offer. He understood now that his role as a father was not to direct every step, but to support, encourage, and celebrate these small victories as they prepared to leave. Mr. Harrison reached into his wallet and handed Mia a generous tip, more than she would ever expect for such a small meal. But it was not just money it was a gesture of gratitude, recognition, and respect. "Thank you for everything today," he said sincerely. "You made this lunch unforgettable." Mia accepted the tip with a warm smile, shaking her head gently. "No need to thank me so much. Seeing Ethan happy is reward enough." Mr. Harrison nodded. But he knew that this moment, this acknowledgement, was important for all three of them. Ethan hugged Mia briefly, his small arms wrapping around her waist. "Bye, Mia. I hope we can play again next time." Mia knelt down and whispered, "Anytime." "Ethan, I'll be ready for the next mission." Ethan ran back to his father, holding his hand tightly as they walked toward the exit. Mr. Harrison felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed his son's transformation, and he knew that the lessons of this lunch would stay with him forever. As they stepped out onto the busy city street, Ethan skipped slightly, full of energy and excitement. Mr. Harrison walked beside him, observing the world with new eyes. Everything seemed a little brighter, a little more full of possibility. He realized that it was not the grandeur of wealth or the power of influence that mattered most. It was the ability to connect, to witness, and to nurture those you love. On the way home, Ethan chattered excitedly about the adventure under the table, describing every detail with vivid enthusiasm. Mr. Harrison listened patiently, asking questions, laughing quietly at the small dramas Ethan had created. He realized that this simple act of engagement, of being present in his son's world, was teaching him far more than any structured lesson could. Ethan was learning confidence, creativity, and trust in Mr. Harrison was learning how to be a better father, not through instruction, but through observation, patience, and support. As they entered the car, Ethan turned to his father with wide, hopeful eyes. "Dad, can we do another mission soon?" Mr. Harrison smiled, ruffling his son's hair gently. "Of course, Ethan. We will have many missions. And next time, I'll help too." Ethan's small laugh echoed in the car, filling it with warmth and joy. For Mr. Harrison, this was a moment of profound clarity. He understood that parenting was not about control, rules, or achievements. It was about presence, connection, and celebration of the small victories in life. The drive home was quiet in some ways, but alive in others. Ethan spoke intermittently about imaginary worlds, heroes, and treasures, while Mr. Harrison listened with genuine interest. He asked questions, offered suggestions, and engaged in ways that felt natural and encouraging. Each exchange strengthened their bond, building a foundation of trust and mutual respect that would endure far beyond the afternoon. Once home, Ethan ran to his room to draw pictures of the adventure, eager to capture every detail on paper. Mr. Harrison watched him for a moment, feeling a sense of pride and awe. He realized that this simple act, leaving him free to play, imagine, and express himself, was far more valuable than any lesson in obedience, manners, or achievement he could ever impart. He understood now that his role was to support, to encourage, and to celebrate rather than to control. That evening, as Mr. Harrison reflected on the day, he realized that the lunch had changed him as much as it had changed his son. He had learned to see, to observe, and to value the small, quiet moments that make life meaningful. He understood that his wealth, power, and influence were secondary to his ability to be present, to listen, and to nurture the people he loved. The simple interaction with Mia had opened his eyes to a new way of parenting, one based on empathy, understanding, and shared joy in the days that followed. Mr. Harrison made a conscious effort to spend more time with Ethan in ways that allowed the boy to express himself freely. They played small games, explored new stories, and laughed together in ways they had rarely done before. Ethan's confidence grew, his imagination flourished, and their bond deepened with each shared moment. Mr. Harrison realized that these were the true treasures of life, moments of connection, joy, and shared experience that could never be bought or forced. Mia's small act of kindness had set off a chain reaction. She had not only created a magical afternoon for a shy child, but it also inspired a father to see his son in a new light. Mr. Harrison knew he would never forget this lunch, nor the lesson it had taught him. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes come not from grand gestures, but from small, thoughtful acts of care, attention, and presence. Weeks later, Ethan still talked about the under-the-table mission. He described it with excitement, pride, and wonder, often asking his father to replay the adventure in new ways. Mr. Harrison joined in eagerly, fully present, laughing with his son, celebrating his creativity and cherishing every moment. He had learned that true parenting was not about teaching lessons or setting expectations. It was about connection, presence, and unconditional support. That afternoon in the restaurant had become a turning point, a moment of transformation for both father and son. Ethan had discovered the joy of being truly seen and understood, while Mr. Harrison had learned to step back, observe, and nurture his son in ways he had never done before. It was a lesson that would stay with them both for the rest of their lives, a reminder that love, attention, and play were more powerful than wealth, authority, or control. And so, what had begun as a simple lunch ended as a life-changing experience. Ethan had learned confidence, creativity, and courage. Mr. Harrison had discovered patience, empathy, and the joy of truly seeing his child. And Mia, without realizing it, had left an indelible mark on both their lives, proving that even a small act of kindness and attentiveness could create ripples that lasted a lifetime. As they closed the door to the restaurant and walked into the city streets, hand in hand, Mr. Harrison felt lighter, happier, and more connected than he had in years. He knew that this was just the beginning of many adventures to come, each one offering the chance to celebrate, encourage, and nurture the most important treasure in his life, his son.